Ladies and gentlemen, Americans are fleeing Russia in droves. These are the Americans that were living there. Technically should have had your butts out of there weeks ago. I'm going to go ahead and play this audio from NPR.
Millions have fled Ukraine since the invasion by Russian forces began. The war is also prompting an exodus from Russia, and that includes many Americans living there. Here's NPR's Greg Myrie.
Journalist Michelle Birdie arrived in Moscow shortly after graduating from Amherst College in 1978. On March 9th, she caught a ride out of Russia with one suitcase, her dog Riley, and no idea when or if she might return.
Before I left, I cried 20 times a day. I just could not believe that I would have to leave and maybe not come back.
When Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th, Birdie initially planned to stay put and keep working at the Moscow Times, an English-language newspaper. But she knew it was time to leave a few days later when Russia passed a law saying anyone criticizing the war could get up to 15 years in prison.
You can't call it a war, you can't call it an invasion, you can't call Russia the aggressor. It would be impossible to obey the law, and it just seems suddenly just very dangerous for all of us.
She's seen a lot over the past 4 decades: the collapse of the Soviet Union, political chaos, financial meltdowns, but nothing like this.
I had 3 days to figure out what of my entire life that I had in Russia I could put in a suitcase and a take-on bag. I just left a full apartment. How do you leave an apartment for 2 months or 2 years?
She took a van to Riga, Latvia.
It cost 100 euros for my dog and 90 euros for me.
Hundreds of American companies are pulling out of Russia, and Dale Buckner is helping some of them. Buckner's company, Global Guardian, has chartered 4 flights out of Moscow for American executives, their families, and many Russian employees at those companies.
Here's the gritty reality. In all of these evacuations, we have typically had 2, no more than 4 days of warning to tell our clients, you're leaving, this is the airport, this is the aircraft, here's your timeline, here's your destination.
He says his company has helped more than 2,000 people leave by air and by road. About 1/3 are Americans and Europeans. The other 2/3 are Russians. He's worked with 8 U.S. and multinational companies, though he declines to name them. Russian authorities are not preventing Russians or foreigners from leaving, but, Buckner says,
they're now conducting what they're calling interviews. You're being interviewed of who you are, where you're coming from, who you work for, why are you departing, where are you headed, what's your final destination?
The State Department says it doesn't have reliable figures on how many Americans were living in Russia before the war or how many have left. But those who fled are believed to be in the thousands. Meanwhile, Michelle Birdie says that even if she can go back to Russia eventually, it won't be the same. Before she left, some of her Russian acquaintances seemed to be living in what she called an alternate reality.
They would just say to me, what is wrong with Biden? He won't leave us in peace. I just can't imagine going back and saying, oh, well, that's over now. It's not going to be over. It's going to take a really long time.
Russia now faces a reckoning, she says, one that will be long and painful. Greg Myrie, NPR News.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh.
Okay. So, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? No matter what these folks say, Putin don't seem to care. And he just seems to be on a mission, and he's not going to stop this mission for anybody. So, you hear their opinion, but I did hear about Russia arresting their citizens if they protest the war, and some of them have been arrested. And Putin said he's going to put felonies on their butts for being out in the streets protesting. So, years ago, I had a relative that lived in Russia, and I have never seen or heard from him in many years now. So I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he's still there or not, but he's been over there probably since the 70s. And we saw him one time in the 80s, and then after that haven't seen him since or heard from him. So I don't know what's going on in that situation. But before the invasion, they had already told Americans to get out of there, and some are still leaving. So it's a high number of them leaving out of Russia right now. According to NPR, the State Department urged Americans to leave Russia shortly after the war began, citing potential for harassment against American citizens. The embassy's limited ability to assist U.S. citizens, limited flights into and out of Russia, and the arbitrary enforcement of local law. Several Americans are being detained or jailed in Russia, though the cases reportedly publicly took place before the war began. And we all know about Brittany Griner, who is a WNBA player who was arrested over there, still over there. Okay. I don't know if any of you heard about that story. I would imagine most of you have. She got accused of smuggling vape cartridges containing hashish oil into Russia. That's why she's in trouble and have not been able to get out of there. The State Department, it doesn't have reliable figures on how many Americans are living in Russia before the war and how many have left, but those who fled are believed to be in the thousands. By comparison, the State Department estimate that more than 20,000 Americans were in Ukraine in the months leading up to the war. Most have left. One American businessman, he was saying that he left Russia shortly after the war began and now managing his company's operations in Russia from Turkey. The businessman he didn't want to be identified. All right. Russian employees are asking him if he can help them get jobs outside of Russia. In his many years in Russia, the businessman said he has never seen such levels of government repression and anti Western sentiment. Yeah, that's why y'all leaving, because they're turning on the Americans that are there. And you know what? I kind of wondered if that was happening, whether it was in Russia or Ukraine, wherever Americans were. But yeah, they're turning on these American citizens that are there. That's why they're hightailing it out of there. All right. The worst part of last week in Russia was having to contact with alternative reality. So this was the woman that was talking. But they're not having much of a choice, y'all. They got to get out of there. They're not safe. And like they said, the embassy cannot guarantee their safety. So they're not going to have much of a choice but to get out of there or risk of harm or even losing their life. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.